What's going on, guys? What's going on, boys? What's going on, girls? What's going on, everybody? I'm welcome. Uh this is the sorry, I'm going through a tunnel. This is the Offshore Gamescast. Welcome to the Offshore Gamescast.
That was it. That was your planned intro that you were sitting on for a few days.
Days. I've been trying to plan that out and think that up good, and it's been honestly, it worked out better than I expected.
Oh yeah, it was perfect. It was fluid. It was great. Unique.
Unique.
Yeah. Dave, who are you?
I'm Dogan.
I'm Dylan, and we're joined today by Andrew from Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about the 16th time that fantasy was final.
Right.
I was gonna
we
text Dave something like that earlier today.
Oh, look at you guys thinking on the same wavelength.
It might have saved the intro if you did.
Yeah, maybe.
There's no saving it. It's just we're always out at sea. We're offshore, man.
Andrew,
Exactly.
tell us about your show.
Okay, yeah. So, Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers is a podcast about video games from the perspective of average gamers, me and my co host Dylan. We talk about whatever games we've been playing, whether they're current or not, whether they're the main thing in the zeitgeist or whether they're like 20 years old. We also have a YouTube channel where we do shorter reviews. I did a ranking of my favorite Assassin's Creed games. Dylan's done some like Diablo 4 tips for casual gamers. He's done like a kind of Diablo 3 retrospective thing. So we've got a lot of different stuff on the YouTube channel. If you're interested in checking out our podcast, we recently interviewed these guys, the hosts of the
Yeah.
Gamescast, and that would be a great
Whoa!
place to jump in. So yeah, we'd definitely appreciate you checking us out.
Yeah, go listen to that. That was a lot of fun, that episode.
Yeah, it was. It was a good
It
time.
was. But we thank you so much for being here, Andrew. To the 105th consecutive uh episode of the Offshore Gamescast. Today we'll be finally reviewing Final Fantasy XVI. Next week, Dylan.
Next week, August 3rd, Pikmin 4. I'm excited to jump back into a Pikmin game. I haven't played since the GameCube ones. I never played 3, so that will be fun. And then August 10th, we are hoping Lyle will be back from her recovery doing Oxenfree 2. That is the hope. She is doing okay, and she's recovering. And last but not least, if you are listening to this, please give us a rating, a review, comment on whatever you're listening on. You can watch this in video form on YouTube or any podcast app that has ever existed. We're probably on there. If you leave us a rating, that helps more than you think, and we appreciate it.
It really does.
And then go subscribe to and rate and review Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers.
That would also be fantastic.
Dave,
we can. What?
School me on this game.
All right, listen. Believe it or not, it wasn't just Square Enix who made this game. Granted, as an overall entity, they published it, but they got a few weird aspects. You know how a lot of developers were just saying, they were getting more corporate and boring, and they were like, "Hey, you're now 2K City that you're in. We got creative business units in Square Enix." Creative Business Units 1, 2, 3, and 4. Specifically, Creative Business Unit 3, which was actually formerly Business Division 5. What the fuck?
Wait, are we talking about Kingdom Hearts titles? What's happening
Yeah,
right now?
That's what
Right?
it feels like.
But the people who worked on this game specifically apparently worked on mainly Final Fantasy 11, 14, because this is like more of the MMO studio, and the Dragon Quest Builder series.
Oh, interesting.
Could have fooled me. People who made Final Fantasy VII remake could have done this in their spare time, it feels like. Release date June 22nd, 2023, about a month ago now, and it came out for the PS5. That's it.
Did Final Fantasy VII Remake ever come to Xbox?
No.
No. This is one of those. Here's, you want one of your facts? I can give it to you early. This is, we have confirmation that PlayStation spent money to be like, fuck you, don't put this on Xbox, and
Yeah.
Square Enix was like, money.
Yeah. This
So
one's
that's
supposed to come to PC at some point, but
yeah,
Xbox will probably never see it.
whatever. I mean,
Yeah, if 7 Remake is still not on there, then I don't see this being on there anytime soon.
if you have an Xbox, upcoming Game Passes, you're not, you're gonna be way too busy anyway doing everything else. Oh, where to start? You're a grizzled young gentleman, like in every Final Fantasy. You're. I feel like that you're very, you're more Noctis than Cloud this time around. You're Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Clive Rothsfield. Um, may possibly not a bastard, but basically the bastard son of the king, of the city of Rosaria. You know, I don't know what their version of time is, but it's like the 800, the late 800s, you know, of their area. Um, it's a very
So this is, I haven't played it all,
right.
but from what I understand, this is supposed to be way more of that like dark, gritty medieval setting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is. There's no steampunk, there's no
Mm-hmm.
cars, there are ruins from like an ancient civilization kind of scattered around, but they never really address that.
They're
They
very
were
Final Fantasy-esque ruins too.
yeah,
They're very
it's
curved.
100% was inspired by Game of Thrones. Like they've straight up come out and said that Game of Thrones was the inspiration for this game and the setting. My
Are there
question,
any airships?
no airships, unless those
Okay.
are what the ruins are. They went for the like gritty dark Game of Thrones like M rating, and I'm kind of confused as to why. Like it gets really violent in some points and they get to
In
cuss.
just the
And
beginning. They get to cut. They cuss throughout, but pretty much, I feel like I feel the same vibe just for the first 2-3 hours.
but I mean they cuss through the whole thing, and there's some later
Yeah.
sections that are pretty violent. But like anytime there's nudity, there's never full nudity. Like they always do the TV thing of everything being like covered up, which like I'm not opposed to that. I'm not like,
Mm-hmm.
we have to see full frontal all the time or anything, but it's like why what was the push to make this M? Like why couldn't it have, you're limiting a potential audience of like people that can buy teen games, younger kids, teenagers, whatever, just so that you can cuss more, because I really think they still held back from a lot of like, yeah, there's like you see blood and you see people being like sacrificed and stuff like that. Like there's some dark stuff, but take away the blood and maybe like turn up the lights a little bit and it could be a T-rated game.
This is more so like one of the facts that the ratings boards just needs to get reevaluated, and whoever's sitting in those seats making those decisions might not be making the right decisions for the people using the material. Because at the same point, yeah, like you could, it's very tame. Like it you know how movies it's like, oh, it's PG-13, but they get away with one cuss. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they just got away with calling it M. Like it's not that crazy.
I feel
Yeah,
like if they were gonna go Game of Thrones, they should have went full Game of Thrones.
that's kind of
And
what I was expecting, and what I like when the reviews and stuff were coming out ahead of time. That's kind of what I thought was like, oh man, we're gonna see like some really kind of adult content here, and it really was mostly just language. Like they could say the F word as much as they want, and that's about all they used it for. There, like I said, there
yeah,
was
a lot
some
of
darker
fucking shit.
tones and some gore and some violence, but again, if you played the Arkham games, those are rated T, and
Yeah.
Batman's like snapping legs and stuff. So it is kind of like, and like how Halo used to be rated M and all that back in the day, and it was like, really, for what?
Yeah. I feel like in that sense, like when I hear it at points it could be seen as overused, but I could also see it as being like more relatable. Because if I was there, I'd be like, ah, fuck, like a whole other round of guys like coming up,
Were
like,
they?
but
Yeah.
they do the thing where like they hyper focus on it, like even like zoom in and stuff. So if like they didn't make it such a focus, and they're like fucking shit, and like just kept going to town, that would have made it better. But we're M, we're edgy.
How old is the word fuck?
16, 1400s.
fornicating under consent of the king. That's that's the like
1300s,
the
1200s.
wives tale of where it came from. I'm not sure if that's
Oh,
actually
really?
fact.
Is it actually?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
never heard that before.
you would go to the king and you would basically be like,
Can we fuck?
"Can we?" And the king would be like,
I consent.
sure. And they would go around to like the houses and like put a paper on the door and like nail it to the door, basically stating which houses can and can't fuck.
Would the sign just say like DTF?
Like I feel like I'm pretty sure it'd almost be like a checkoff board, and it would be like rules, and it'd be like, yeah, they good.
So is this how most of your episodes end up, like 10 minutes in, or is this specifically for Final Fantasy?
No, we usually go off the rails.
They go all over the place.
Yeah. It's
Was it the last episode we went on a 10-minute tangent because Dylan doesn't understand superhero origins, and we explained most of the DC to him.
Oh,
I don't even remember that happening. So
lucky you.
Superman is canonically a 32 to 33-year-old man.
Oh yeah, I remember this now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Who else? So you're a little bitch bastard boy. You got so you got Jill. Is this your sister? Not
No.
your sister? Is she your buddy?
You remember? Do you remember Theon from Game of Thrones?
Yes.
How
I don't
he
think
was-
Dave ever watched it.
He was like brought in by the Starks, but he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
actual blood. That's essentially what Jill is here. She was her
She's a bastard.
yeah, her parent she's probably an orphan, or she was, I think they explain it later that it was like in a peace treaty or something that she would be a ward to the Rosarians to like learn their ways and their culture and stuff like that. No, Jill and Clive end up being like romantically involved. So
Oh,
but
well,
it initially gave off stepbrother stepsister vibes.
yeah, no, like I said, it's not actually rated M like that. It's
yeah,
it's
I was
much
also
more
gonna say,
innocent.
if they are siblings,
yeah.
I mean, that is also Game of Thrones.
Mhm.
So, I
It
mean,
took like 15 hours in for them to like almost get a kiss, and it didn't happen, and they were like, "Oh, we got caught." Oh,
They
like,
do that multiple times throughout the game.
Great. I've only passed the first one.
Yeah.
It's like it's so like puppy love cheeky, and it's just like cool, or whatever. You got Joshua, star of the show, little brother. So let's get into some of the facts. You're not a dominant. You're more of a sub. Your younger brother is the dominant. And your mom hates that about you. Why aren't you the dominant? You know?
is that really like the early plot point?
Yeah. That's like Clive's family dynamic. So essentially, like, imagine Game of Thrones, but every country has like one person within that country that is like has supernatural kaiju powers where they can just turn into this massive kaiju monster of some sort. And so these countries use that as kind of like their nuclear weapon, and so there's kind of always this like nuclear standoff kind of mentality of like, well, if we send our dominant out to fight, they're going to send their dominant out to fight, and then there's going to be just nothing. This whole area is going to be leveled, and so it kind of creates this really interesting dynamic. And so yeah, Joshua is the one that has been chosen to be the Phoenix dominant, but he hasn't really like fully come into that power yet when you first start the game. But he's not the oldest child. Clive is, and so that's why your mom resents you for that. She thinks that you should have been the one to have been chosen by the Phoenix.
And your dad shows up and he's like, "Hey, sport, you want to
Yeah,
go play catch?"
You're a daddy's boy, and Joshua's a mommy's boy. You
Yeah.
you can boil it down to that.
And Jill's just there.
Yeah, well, Jill's neither of their children. So
Yeah. When it comes to the dominance, their main thing is like elements. So it's like Joshua's dominant of fire. There's like an electric one, a wind one, a ground one. There's a bunch of ones.
Have you
there's a
played
lot.
any other Final Fantasies, Dylan?
So Dave and I, both of our first one was 15.
Okay.
And then we both played 7 Remake. I have also since played through 12.
So
and I've played like some 14, but I will say every Final Fantasy game I've played, when they start getting to like lore stuff, I I just kind of accept that things are happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've seen that, there's these gods, I guess, that are kind of throughout every game,
Hmm.
and I'm just kind of, all right, yeah,
So it sounds like you and I have basically the exact same track record where I started with 15 because I had an Xbox, and then I played 7 Remake, and
Mhm.
then I played like Integrate or whatever that was. I didn't play 12, so you got me beat on that one. I've dabbled in like a few like of the ones that came to Xbox back in the day, but never like actually got into them. But yeah, same thing. When I would play like 15, and then all of a sudden this like giant dude came out of the ground, and we were like punching his fingers. I was like, well, I guess this is just Final Fantasy.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
But in
very
this,
God of War
yeah,
in those aspects with this game.
but in this one they do like an actual, like they do in my opinion a really good job of contextualizing and integrating those things into this world. Like they explain why they're here, how they're here, and then people are reacting to them in a natural way.
Hmm. And like, there's groups of people, like cults formed around it, and it's like, yeah, I get why you're brainwashed. Let me fix that with a
Right.
sword.
okay,
Um,
because yeah, every Final Fantasy game I've played, when it comes to lore, like world lore, I'm just always confused. So I'm glad that there's at least some explanation going on.
well,
I would
along
say
with every other game, this one also has a blight, so that we're still on that trend.
this game does a pretty good job of like explaining its lore in my opinion, because a lot of the most confusing things to me were the Game of Thrones aspects of like, who's this nation, why do they hate this nation, where are they located, all that kind of stuff. But they did a really cool thing called their like active time lore thing, where you can pause the game at any time, and it's kind of like when you pause a show on Amazon Prime, and then it like shows you all the like actors and stuff at the bottom and like who they're playing and whatever. This pulls up just a screen in real time based on the characters you're looking at and where you are in the game, and tells you like, okay, this person is associated with this country, they're at war with this country, they're doing this thing. And so if you really want to dive into the weeds and educate yourself, you can. I didn't do a lot of that, and I still kind of got the gist of it by the end.
Hmm.
But it is a really cool feature that I feel like a lot of these deep RPGs could benefit from. Like the first time I played The Witcher 3, if they had something like this, would have helped me a lot.
That's cool.
That's probably the most RPG element of the game too.
No, there's damage numbers.
Okay, okay, there's damage numbers.
This is. I was actually going to ask that because this is the big debate I keep seeing on social media. Is Final Fantasy 16 an RPG or just a straight up action game?
It's an
It's an
action
action
game.
game
It's an
with
action
Okay,
game.
all right.
It's so
That handles it.
RPG light, it shouldn't even be a Final Fantasy game. It literally looks like a reskinned like DLC of Final Fantasy VII, with just like new characters that have nothing to do with the plot of Final Fantasy VII, which makes perfect sense for Final Fantasy. It definitely. I mean, comparing to what I know, which is Final Fantasy VII remake and Final Fantasy 15, it's just not on the same scale.
I mean, yes and no, because Final Fantasy 15, like their whole big thing was this is the first truly open world Final Fantasy game, right? This one is like, no, we're doing the linear thing, but where we're going to like have scale is in these ridiculous over the top kaiju battles and
Yeah.
cutscenes. Like for me, the way I've kind of like explained this game to people when they ask me about it is I feel like I'm watching some sort of a like really high production like fantasy show, and then in between I get to do combat.
It feels like a movie. Like you're not there for the game. There's
But
every aspect of the gameplay feels so light. Like it's just there. They did the minimum.
I like the combat a lot, and I think in the
Hmm.
beginning it 100% does feel light, but you ultimately, this might be light spoilers, you ultimately get the powers of like 5 or 6 icons by the end of the game. And so when you have all of those different elemental abilities that you can like swap between and you can respec at any time, and you're kind of deciding how you want to rotate through them, because this was made by the MMO team, so there is a lot of
Hmm.
MMO energy of like, I'm going to beat on this thing, and then I'm going to hit my like super powerful move, and then while it's on
Yeah.
cooldown I'm going to shift to something else, and then I'm going to hit that, and then I'm going to go back to cooldown. And so they have a stagger meter and they have a health bar, and so a lot of the abilities you get will either do like substantial stagger damage or they'll do like more health damage. And so when you break an enemy's stagger, then they just sit there and let you beat on them. So it kind of becomes this like back and forth of like, okay, I need to use these abilities to break the stagger, then these
Mm-hmm.
abilities to do damage to the health. Towards the end of the game, because for the record, I have beat it. I beat it like an hour ago at the time of recording. So I'm like coming right off the end. Towards the end, some of those fights were like ridiculously drawn out and like, in my opinion, a little bit bloated. But that kind of core idea of the combat where you're like trying to break the stagger to do the damage to the health and then retreating when they get back up and all that. There's a dodge that if you do it perfectly will like slow down the enemy, so then you can do like a precision counterattack. So it very much has that kind of like action game, like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry kind of DNA to it.
Mm-hmm.
The RPG stuff didn't really need to be there at all. I feel like they put it there because they knew people are going to be like, well, Final Fantasy is supposed to be an RPG.
They
Even
did it.
it feels like where games try to take one aspect of it and make like that be the general theme of their game, and like, oh, we want to do a big open world, or we want to like go hard hitting with the dialogue and be like very narrative focused. For some reason Final Fantasy just said fuck it and just went specifically with visuals in boss fights as their aspect, because you have kind of dialogue. You can talk to some people and be like, "How you been?" in their one place that they never move, and they're like, "Been better." You're like, "All right."
Good
You
talk.
have this review is going to be all over the place at this point. You have the similar to how the linear the game is itself, with just like the narrow pathways and just feels like the story and everything. Even just the weapon progression is so linear. Like, you get to a point in the game, it's
Yeah.
level based. You're given a set of items. You obviously have enough money to pick the strongest, but then for some reason, 2 missions later, you're just given a full set of gear, weapon, bracers, this and that. It's going to be stronger than anything you're going to find for hours. So why wouldn't you use it? And then by the time you get to a point to buy stuff again, you probably have already just gotten something else. And but there's only so many items in the game, and then you just kind of like level them up to a point that's it's even light in the resource department. You gather shit, but the shit that you gather is exactly what you need for the item that you just got. Like, you don't have to go hunting for it. It's just kind of given to you. It's very handholdy through a lot of its gaming aspects, because it feels like it's just there to be there.
Yeah. Especially
um
early on, because the further on you get, the more you have to like do side quests or do what they have are hunts that you can unlock, which are like powerful enemies that you can go find in the world. And those are actually pretty fun, like combat encounters. But yeah, for the most part, the blacksmith stuff I don't think needed to be in the game, because it is literally just buy like craft new sword with the stuff you happen to have, then upgrade it a couple times, and the next time you finish a main mission, repeat.
mhm.
And it just really only changes aesthetics. I will say you don't ever get a full set of gear from a quest after that. Like, you get the suit from the cover of the game. Like,
Right.
they do that the one time, and then after that, and that kind of bums me out, because I wish that all the crap that I was crafting and putting on me aside from my sword actually changed my aesthetic, because
Yep.
I like that in games. I like being able to customize my character. I mean, like, you can still be playing Arthur Morgan, but he can look completely different depending on who's playing him or whatever, but it's still the same character, same kind of idea with like Geralt and some of the others. But Clive, once he gets his Dracula outfit, like, that's what he wears the whole time. And the only thing that
Yep.
aesthetically changes is his sword.
So, is this game like it sounds extremely like linear.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't sound like there's any actual exploring to go get those items. They're just like on your path.
Do you remember Final Fantasy VII? How it was just very tight towns. All you really did was
Yeah.
just kind of go up and down alleyways, and then even like the bigger sections, it was kind of like a decent, like kind of sized map that you could do some stuff in, but they each had like little pathways that went off to other little pathways to do other things. It's basically the same thing. I mean,
Okay.
It's
you'll
exactly the same.
they do this mix of, here's a group of enemies that ideally in a turn-based game would be there that you would walk into and then do a fight. except you're going to do it real time. But you can also just walk by them as if like they were a group of enemies that you just didn't come across in that turn-based game where it just and like went into. So it's weird seeing that mix of like here's old classic with a new format when everything is just kind of sprinkled and not really in depth. It's like, who there's a fun little tidbit that no one's gonna notice, care about, or has anything to do with anything, and just kind of makes it easier for me to know to run away from stuff.
I kind of wish that they fully committed to linear. I wish that they just said,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be full 100% a linear game. We're not going to have these little open areas, these like side questy things to do. But I feel like they were scared that people would like hate that. But I think that that creates bloat. On the one hand, I understand what they're doing because, especially, you know, as the game goes on, usually the kind of pace of what you're doing is you go to a town or an area, you do the thing, you fight a bunch of enemies, you end up like fighting the big boss of that area, and it's probably some of the most like impressive, high budget, intense, crazy stuff you'll ever see in a video game. It's amazing. And then you come down from that, you go back to your hub, and then you go like pass out apples to the people at your home base. And it's like, I understand why they're doing that pacing wise. It's like, okay, we just had this really big like crescendo moment. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's chill out for a chapter. Let's like just kind of hang out with the people at the hub. Let's calm down. Let's all like kind of regroup, catch our breath, and then we'll go into the next big thing. But sometimes that calm drags on a little bit too long, especially if you're someone like me that likes to complete everything in a game and do all the side quests and stuff. I mean, I hit a certain point where I just wanted to see how the story ended, and I was just leaving side quests on the table because there, I would say about 10 to 15% are good content wise. The rest are just like fetch quests because the MMO team made this, and they feel very like MMO side quests of go get me this thing, bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are really cool, like you get some lore, you get some character development, stuff like that. And some of them that are marked with a plus, you want to do because they will give you either a buff to your equipment or they'll give you an ability or something that can help you throughout the game. For the most part, though, you could probably skip a lot of the side quests and probably have a better experience. And I think for the size that this game is and the length it is and the amount of time you're going to put into it, if they would have gone full linear, I think it would have been an overall better game. But I think that the Final Fantasy community would have been more vocal or toxic or whatever about that choice. Because I feel like they felt like, hey, we have to have some of this exploration and these side quests and this like open areas and stuff because that's what Final Fantasy is. But I mean, Final Fantasy, they have an MMO. I think was it 11 was super linear, or maybe it was 13 was super linear. They've had like some really linear games. I mean, even 7 Remake, we've brought it up a few times on this episode. That's a pretty linear game with what I thought was a ton of bloat at the end.
Yeah.
But overall, I still really like that game. Um, so they're kind of always trying new things, and I appreciate what this game tried to do. I just think that if they took another crack at like the action game version of Final Fantasy, I think they could trim some of the fat.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it can be hard too when you're using certain comparisons, like the way I look at mainly as a mainline game going from Final Fantasy 15 to 16. Like I enjoyed 7 Remake because 7 Remake is a whole different aspect of what it was, but it still follows, you know, the path that it is. But like in my mind, I look at Final Fantasy 15 and 16, and it's like they made Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and were like, I have a great idea, and then came out with Sword and Shield, like a huge step backwards.
The only difference I would say is that the combat system is pretty substantially different in the fact that like 7 Remake, you get to swing your sword as
Yeah.
Cloud, but it's mostly just so you're not bored while you wait for your abilities to charge.
Mm-hmm.
That game's it's turn based except for the fact that you get to run around. Like you're still dropping moves and waiting for cooldowns and trying to trigger effects. And I thought it was a really cool way to do combat in a game like that. This game is straight up action. It's action light. Like if you
Yeah.
were to compare it to like a Bayonetta or DMC, like I feel like it's much more approachable than that. But that's
When
what
you
they were going
start it,
for.
I feel for the first like say 7 to 10 hours, you're probably playing like the most Dark Souls like game there is. and then from the point that you start unlocking more of those icons and
Yeah.
powers, it turns into an absolute fireworks show on your screen, and you're just doing insane God of War DMC moves every 3 seconds, and that's it. And it's just like,
Yeah, it's probably one of the most visually impressive games I've ever played as far as like particle effects and things happening on screen. And when they do the like cutscenes or they do the icon battles and you're just basically doing quick time events and stuff, it looks
mhm.
incredible. On the
It's
flip
all
side of that,
so Dragon Ball.
when you're running around and you're doing those side quests like giving away apples like I was talking about, these characters are just stiff as a board.
Mhm.
And their mouths are like moving, but they're out of sync. It was kind of like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where some of the like pre-rendered stuff with the main characters was like, wow, this is probably like the best gaming could ever look. But then you would go to the town and like the doors didn't, the doors were well, the whole door controversy. But then the characters, like the guards standing by the gate or whatever, just looked like these awful like polygonal models. And
Mhm.
you can, so you can kind of tell where they put their money. And so that kind of creates like the whole game, I think, feels unbalanced in where they decided to put the money and the spectacle, in how like the side quests are versus the main quest, and how like the tacked on RPG elements are compared to how fun the combat ends up being, in my opinion. But I feel like for them to kind of come out of this RPG genre and take a crack at like an action game, it's a good first action game, but there's very obvious ways in which they could improve it gameplay wise. Story wise, I think it's pretty strong once it gets going. It takes a long time to get going. I mean, that's Final Fantasy for you. The classic, like, oh yeah, you just play like 25 hours and then it really gets good. Like that that's basically this game.
Can we talk about the running?
Yeah.
You can't even run when you want. You can't even decide that. You don't get to
No.
decide that.
Yeah, the
You want to talk
the
about
running.
linear? You get to run when the game lets you run. And you know what? You're in a big open field. Give it a few seconds. You'll get a sonic boost of just and go like you break the speed of sound for like a split second and have this giant wave over you. Maybe sometimes maybe down like a long straightaway, if it's really long, you get a little quick burst. You don't get to fuck you. You don't get to run. You
Yeah.
think you think you get to climb, walk up to it, it does it for you. You could jump. It sucks. It's pitiful. It sucks. Fuck you. You want to squeeze through a barrier? Fuck you. Do it.
Is this like Anthem, where out in the world you can fly and be all quick, but once you're in town, you're like moving in molasses?
No, it's more
It's all
like
slow.
you get a side quest where you can't leave, or it might even be a main quest where you can't leave this village until you repair this bridge. You like find this guy that can fix the bridge.
Mm.
And then when you're out in combat, Clive has this like kind of dash ability he can do to like dash up to enemies real quick. That dash is like triple the length of this bridge, like the gap that the bridge would have covered.
Okay.
You can't even use that
Yeah.
for movement though, because the amount of
No.
time that he takes, the amount of time that you'd be saving by dashing, he takes by standing up and waiting a second, and then he goes.
Yeah, this choice feels very kind of more just like Japanese developer to me, where it's like any other game would just put a sprint on your left stick and you would be able
Yeah,
to sprint. But this is the game also where you walk up to a big door and you press X to open it, but then you
and
have to
then
pull right trigger to really open it. Like
because
there's
we're
just
we're on a PlayStation 5 and you got to feel that haptic feedback when
Huh.
you push open a real heavy door. I cannot stand PlayStation and the shit that they do with their technology because it's all bullshit gimmicks. And you know what? Fuck you, Killzone Shadowfall. You died so fast because you were just a spectacle to show off what a stupid little controller can do. And you know what? When I'm trying to be cozy at night and I'm trying to play a game and I'm trying to play a game and it's nighttime and all of a sudden I have headphones in and all of a sudden I find an audio log and it just screams out of my controller and I'm freaking out, like I'm trying to block it, but it's so ergonomically false. My hands can't get over that speaker. So it's just, and I'm like, people are sleeping. It's nighttime. Nobody asked for this. Can I turn it off? Maybe. That'll take a lot of time to figure out. Regardless, every single thing, fucking, let's make haptic feedback super cool. Let's put it in everything. Let's waste our time by pushing open the door. It's so heavy, right? It's so heavy. Cool. Again,
Hold on. Hold on. The door thing sounds kind of cool to me, but is it every door?
No,
every
it's
big
like
door.
big doors, but I feel
Okay.
like
At
even
least once a chapter. There's 68 of them bitches.
even From Software does a better job of making you feel like that door is heavy and you just push the button. But your
Yeah.
character is like Clive, he still
Yeah.
just kind of pushes the door open. You just had to pull the trigger. You are completely wrong about the controller and the speaker and all that. Listening to that baby cry anytime I fell off a ledge in Death Stranding, that was immersion.
God. All right, you have one aspect where this thing might work appropriately.
That's
If
real gaming.
if I'm playing a game and you decide to use that shitty speaker, and I already hear like, "Oh, Jameson, we gotta get to the place where we're going," and I'm just like, "Fuck!" And it's the loudest thing in the world.
What I hate
And
is when you like jump into a Call of Duty lobby or something and it like automatically turns it on as your mic, your
oh my
controller
god,
now.
I
I'm
have that
like,
shit.
I'm like,
I
no,
hate
turn
staring
that
at the
off.
orange button because, like, yeah, no shit, I don't want no one to listen to me talk.
Yeah, then
But
you
I don't
mute
want
it
to
and then your
stare at this
controller's
orange
lit up.
button.
Yeah. And then your controller's dying even faster.
I feel like that should be opposite.
Yeah.
Right?
You should have to
Like-
turn it on.
Right. You the orange light is on. That means your mic is on.
We're gonna get a
But it's
message being
off,
like,
it's off.
"That is how that works." Be like, "What?"
No, it's not, because every time I turn on the PlayStation, pretty much the first, even if I'm not gaming, the first thing I do is make sure that orange light is on. I hit the mic button.
What do we even? What's next? There's a dog. You can pet him.
You can
the
pet him.
dog.
You get a trophy for petting him so many times. The dog is
Whoa.
one of the things that I thought was the dog has some really cool moments. The dog is just Ghost from Game of Thrones, but the dog has some cool stuff that happens with it throughout the story. But what I thought was hilarious, because I beat this game, like I said, very recently, that dog is with you through the entire game. Spoiler alerts, the dog does not die. So that means that when you're doing the Final Fantasy thing, which you know how most Final Fantasy games end, like, you know, you're fighting God, the dog is right there with you, like, all right, let's kill this god, you know. And it's like, you're a dog, what are you doing here?
Is it like a dog or is it like a direwolf dog?
It's
like
like
a wolf.
it's a wolf. It's like slightly bigger than a dog, not as big as the wolves from Game of Thrones, but it does get some like Final Fantasy like anime bullshit powers
Sure.
at some point.
Yeah.
So,
It's
that makes
also
sense.
an icon, basically. It also it's dumbass shit. It's also, you're all superheroes. The dog's a Dragon Ball character too. It's like,
I mean,
when
that's Final Fantasy for you,
I
though.
know,
Like,
but there's something about it. Like when I saw it and like I saw that whole scene go down, my first thought was The Last Jedi when Leia just uses the Force and comes back. I'm like, oh snap, they're pulling the coincidence and convenience card. Like, oh my god, like I've got, we haven't seen the dog in half an hour, and all of a sudden he's got superpowers, and then I'm like, ah,
Does the wolf wear a cape?
no, it's not Crypto.
no,
I don't know who Crypto is.
Superman's dog. He's
yeah.
canonically 33 to 34 years old.
God, I love callbacks. On top of being able to pet the dog, you're able to like control him in battle. You can either make him like sick enemies, you can make him heal you, which does like very little. Along with that, there's a whole aspect of the game which is basically easy mode. They kind of give you like 5 necklaces you could put on. You can only wear 3 at once, and you get more throughout the game, having to do with different powers that you acquire. But they just kind of do things for you. Like I equipped one that basically, like in the middle of battle, what you would have to do is you would have to hit, was it right on the D-pad to switch from your
I think it's
healing?
left, but yeah.
Either or, you switch
Mhm.
your whatever healing options and potions over to controlling the dog. I said no. So there's a whole necklace that just makes the dog do shit for you. So he's attacking like every 3 seconds. I'm like, this
That
is
sounds like a nice necklace
so
to have.
yeah. Except you're constantly hearing the audio over and over of just
That's what I was gonna say. It reminded me
yeah.
of when I was playing Tales of Arise, and the characters are just like shouting out their like attacks over and over. Because yeah, Clive's just like sick 'em Torgal over and
Come,
over and
Torgal.
over.
Good boy, Torgal. Yes, Torgal. Oh, God damn it, O'Brien. You hear me, O'Brien?
That's all right. Does this cross the line of character talking way too much to an annoying point?
Oh, it does, but it's not in the same vein of something like a Horizon or Tomb Raider, where it's like
Okay.
Yeah,
talking to themselves in such an obvious tone of just like being like, "Oh my god, I should walk to the front door because Amazon package is here," and then you walk to the front door
It's my
because the
favorite
Amazon
game.
package is there. Yeah, it's Death Stranding too.
this is just JRPG stuff. Where like
Okay.
anytime you play a JRPG and you're in combat, they're yelling about stuff. That's basically what this is. I think the rings that like they're essentially accessibility options, but they're like disguised as rings. So like you can do one that always gives you like a perfect dodge, and you can do one that
Yeah.
always will do like the max combo of your attack, as opposed to just like you having to pull it off yourself. And so like you have these options to kind of let the game assist you, but they take the slot of like, oh, if I wanted to put a ring here that like gave me a shorter cooldown for this ability, or gave me more XP when I killed enemies or whatever, you can't do that because you have your accessibility ring on. That, I think it's a really cool idea, but the game also has like a story mode.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know. The only ring I used was just like you. I used the dog one because I couldn't really be bothered to be fiddling with that menu while I was doing all the like icon stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I guess easy mode is story mode, and then normal mode is just like playing it on regular like action mode, and then like somewhere between the two is if you want to equip rings. Like I guess it's for people maybe that don't like action games or aren't used to them yet. It's like a way to kind of ease you in. But
Mm-hmm.
it is just kind of, I like the idea, but I think it doesn't quite stick the landing in this game.
Everything's just sprinkled in. They don't work great, but they work. I guess we talk about how the story just kind of falls apart at one point. Or
Yeah,
how about you get about an hour or so of exposition before you're thrown into about 5 hours of like backstory from like 13 years ago.
Well, hold on. Before we put up any sort of spoiler alert, I do want to ask, how long are these cutscenes?
I put my controller down every time.
it it depends on which ones, but yeah, like it feels to me like, okay, so in typical JRPG fashion, you have the cutscenes where like characters are talking and they're just standing there and their mouths are kind of moving off sync, and you can like tap through that dialogue if you want to,
Yep.
whatever. Then you have like some of the boss fight cutscenes where it's like, oh, you may have to do a quick time event in here, so you better keep your controller in your hand. Those kind of things that can happen. Then you have just the straight up like pre-rendered, I may as well be watching the
That's
like
yeah.
HBO movie version of this. And
That's what I want to know about.
some of those can be pretty, they're not Kojima level. You're not
Mhm.
watching like 3 hours at the end of Death Stranding or whatever, but there were some where I was like, all right, I'm just gonna chill. I'm gonna put my controller down and hang out. Some are quicker than others, but yeah, if it does feel like you can see them coming though. It's
Yeah,
like
they
at
can
the,
trick you too. I picked up my controller and then been like, oh,
yeah,
Like for
it's
a quick time event, or that the cutscene was over.
thinking it was over.
it was
Oh,
over and then it
okay.
comes back for more. It seems like, you going into like a big boss fight, there may be like a pretty lengthy, maybe like 3 to 5 minute cutscene of like, hyping everybody up, the characters yelling at each other, whatever. You do the big boss fight, and then it's like between chapters, like at the kind of those big moments I was talking about, you're gonna get like a good 5 minute, cutscene at the end of that, kind of transitioning you into whatever's gonna happen next. And then there's a couple points in the game where like there's a time jump that happens, and so like that's a pretty big like cutscene that happens. And
And like what that's one of my biggest issues that I bet they answer hopefully at some point, but it's like why the fuck do they keep calling him that?
yeah, I mean they definitely 100% address that.
Good. They because it's like don't don't leave that to the that's stupid as shit.
Yeah,
He
no, and
he
it doesn't,
wanted me to
really take that long to address it, but it's also not like that deep of a reason.
it's also
It,
taking too fucking long already.
Yeah, it's more just about like the symbolism of the thing. But that's what I was saying about making this game 100% linear. Like I feel like if they would have trimmed this game down and just had it be like a 25 to 30 hour just like linear
Hmm.
game with it, with the story just being tight, like a lot tighter, I think that would have, in my opinion, made it a better game at the end of the day.
I feel
But
like they
I'm
also
not a diehard Final Fantasy fan like some people are.
I think in some of their ways they're ruining themselves with some repetition and ending up making it more predictable
Yeah.
after between a mix of doing the narrative and the gameplay. Like after you start getting a few of the powers, you're like, all right, every time I get a power, basically someone's gonna die, and I'm gonna get their power, and so everyone who has a power is probably gonna die, and I'm like, okay, this is going well so far.
Yeah,
That's
well, they I will say that that is not always the case, but yeah, for as far as story progression, that starts to get a little predictable. But for me, it was more like this game has lasted so long that I'm starting to get bored of the repetition of this combat system that I thought was really
Yeah.
cool in the beginning. But I've been doing the same. I have like an MMO. I have my rotation. I have my moves that I'm rotating through to kill the big bad. And so by the
Hmm.
time I'm like, I don't know, 70 hours in or however long this took, I'm like, I see another health bar come up and I'm like, really? They have a third phase? Like, do we have to do this?
Yeah.
But overall, I'm pretty positive on like the combat system as a whole and the story as a whole, like how where it goes. I do think there's a point in the story where it goes from like them doing the Game of Thrones thing to them doing the Final Fantasy thing, and I kind of
so.
wish they stuck with Game of Thrones.
Let's throw up the spoiler alert. I'm assuming, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'm assuming that point is also the point you're talking about, Dave.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely part of it. Um,
So spoiler alert for not the end of the game, but midpoint, I guess.
well, this is something that I wouldn't like. I consider it a spoiler, but it also is one of those that happens so early in the game that's part of the plot points. That's like you're gonna talk about it. You know, your little brother dies so fucking early on, like first 2 hours, kicks the bucket. You know,
Okay.
he turns into one of his icons, the this big phoenix. There's another big icon of fire there that you're like, what? There's two fire ones, and you know the other one kills the brother. And you spend like the entire time between this flashback and going forward, doing what you're doing 13 years later, figuring out what happened. You figure out what happened, and then other things happen, and you don't get answers for them, at least not to that point. And then, you know, we're doing something else over here. And we're going to do that for a while. We're going to focus on these battles. You know what? We're going to give out some apples for a little bit. And I'm like, why didn't we stick with this? We got up so good to a point, and now everyone's calling you another name.
You seem really hung up on this other name.
A couple, only the close people are still calling you Clive, but everyone else is like, hey, the guy. There's this dude, and he dies. You know what he does? He's so handsome. He's so sexy. He's the most attractive person in the entire game. There's no doubt about it. And I just realized he also voices a character in Diablo 4, which is cool.
Yes, he does, and a lot of characters in The Witcher 3. He's got a
Mhm.
voice like garbage disposal, so you'll recognize it pretty instantly.
Very, very.
Garbage disposal.
It's
You,
so deep and like gravelly
you,
and
Okay,
like
Dylan, you
that's
play
what I was
Diablo.
picturing.
You know Lorath, whatever.
Not by name.
it's
I
it's
like to go around and with a
the one they
take a
try to
walk.
trick you that like he comes in with the deer on his shoulder and the axe when you're in his house and he's like, well, at least let me feed you dinner or whatever. That's
Mhm.
that guy.
Oh, the yeah. Okay, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
his voice.
Yeah, but he does it so
Okay.
much sexier for this character. It's so much better.
What's
So
this character's name? Hold on. Let me get a
Sid.
look at this guy.
Sid,
Oh, it's
There-
Sid.
There's a Sid in
Sid.
every Final Fantasy, and in 15, Sid
Yeah.
looked much different from this Sid.
All right, hold on. Let's see what this Sid looks like. Oh wow, this is a very different Sid. This looks
Yes.
nothing like Sid.
That's a good looking Sid.
Eh,
That's a good looking man.
eh,
And with that
Eh.
voice too.
eh.
I don't. Hey, look, I'm in the majority over here. So
It's funny what you're talking about as far as like me beating the game feels so long ago based on the things that happen later with characters that I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember having similar feelings at the time, but then just stuff just keeps happening. My thing is like halfway through, well, where you're at, like early on, there's that, which is where the time jump happens and where Clive ends
Hmm.
up looking like he does on the cover of the game. Well, actually,
He's
on the cover, he still has the brand,
so
but
we'll throw on a little extra there. There's this thing called brandeds, which are basically like they turn into like this lowly slave esque like mercenary group, but they used to be like pretty much like the army, the guard, but they have this big like X brand on them. They're called branded,
Oh, it's
and
an X.
no,
pretty much
it's like a tribal lightning bolt down their cheek.
like if you were to take two swords, and it kind of X's because it has like a little peak
It's
down
like,
the
is this going to be a
bottom,
problem with Elon Musk here?
right?
Is
Basic
there going to be a lawsuit?
Basically the branded are so anybody in this world that is not an icon, and even some icons in certain like cultures are still deemed as like lower citizens, but
Hmm.
for the most part, like all the people in this world that are born with magical abilities, for the most part they're considered lesser citizens and they brand them, and then those people are like the slaves of this culture, of this
Wait,
world.
wait. This feels backwards to me.
Exactly. It's like the people in power don't want the ones that have actual power to be able to rise up. And also like this magic
That's yeah.
slowly sucks the life out of their body and kills them if they use it too much.
There are
So the
these big mother crystals all around the land that people are like, it's doing so good, it's giving us everything, and
There's
it's
always
like it's
crystals.
taking everything. No one
th-
realizes.
that's where it gets Final Fantasy. Like so
Yeah,
it shifts. At first it's just like warring nations, they have these nuclear like kaiju people, you know, it's Game of Thrones but with a little bit of that like Final Fantasy flavor. Then at a point it becomes Final Fantasy with a little bit of Game of Thrones flavor where it's like, oh, now it's all about mother crystals and it's all about like
That's the
hmm
hunting
shit where I get
down,
confused.
yeah,
yep.
hunting down like this powerful entity that we don't know who or why or what they're doing, and
You
it's all
also
super convoluted until like the last 3 hours of the game where they finally like just puke like exposition onto you and like explain
yeah.
what happens, which just taking the lore for what it is and the story and all that, I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting, but it's like it was a long process to get here.
It
Sounds
feels like
like
there's a lot of filler shit too. I mean, you go do shit for Jill at one point. You spend like an hour. You meet up with her again, and she's like, "I've been through a lot of shit." And then you go and you handle her shit once and for all, and it just kind of felt like it happened. But it also kind of went along with what you were doing too. It just so happened, but at the same time, it just felt so meaningless.
The Jill and Clive thing is something I would love to dive in on like a full spoiler cast because it's such a weird tone for a relationship. Like they go for the M rating, right? We've talked about that. But then these two are just like, it's like they were going for the will they, won't they thing through the whole game,
It's like middle school.
but they were always will they. There was there was never won't they.
Yeah,
It was more like, how are these two people fighting side by side, spending their lives together from basically literally childhood to now being in their probably late 20s to early 30s, and they were still supposed to believe that every time they try to kiss they get interrupted. Like, what is happening here? It felt
it's literally just
it
a strict ass society, and they get cock blocked every hour. That's
it felt
how it
so
happens.
it felt so silly. And so then they were going for like, eventually there's a moment where like they finally get like some time together, and it's like, oh, you guys were trying to build this up to be this like special moment, and it's like, it probably could have been if it would have happened like 30 hours ago, but now it just kind of feels like weird and forced.
I wish they did a real like tone shift and went along with like the Strangers of Paradise and just did some weird ass shit. Like imagine they lead up this whole thing. The game's M rated. You know they're trying to sneak kisses and it doesn't work, and they finally get their moment, and then Clive busts out like, "Fuck! All right, I'm gonna finger you now." And then it's just whoa, whoa, and they say M rated. They pop up on the screen just to remind you as like a spoiler warning, because otherwise there's no point for a romance. It's just on the side. Again, another problem with the Last Jedi.
Have you played any Strangers of Paradise, Andrew?
No, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I was imagining where you were heading with that analogy of Clive
Yeah.
sitting there and then pulling out like an iPod and playing Frank
Yep.
Sinatra or something. So like I
Yeah,
know a lot of the
it's
memes,
yeah,
but
it's such
Mhm.
a
I want every
yeah.
time it's on sale, I want to get it. And like, if there wasn't so many other things coming out, like I want to put time into Strangers of Paradise so bad.
I like Neo and I liked Wo Long, so I feel like I would
Hmm.
vibe well enough with the gameplay. It's just the same thing where it's like I need to wait for a time where like good games are not coming out, so
And
I can
fucking,
justify playing
Yeah.
it.
and on top of that, like Wolong specifically just got a DLC, and I'm like, oh, I want to play that so bad too, but there's so many things coming out. Wolong is
Hmm.
great, so good.
Yeah,
How long did it take you to get past the first boss?
for Wo Long,
Yeah,
2 tries.
fuck you. Anyway,
Yeah, it didn't
uh,
take me that many tries
I
either.
heard like it took my co-host Dylan a long time, and
it
I've
took
heard
me
that.
over 2 hours.
Yeah, I
To
heard it was like
yeah,
a real big skill check for a lot of people, and
it was.
I either just clicked with the like parry system right away, or like I just got lucky. But yeah, for me it was like it was 2 tries.
No, that took me forever, and then it clicked, and I was like, oh, I enjoy these games now, and now I'm like, all right, at some point I'll play Sekiro. At some point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You should.
You
I
definitely
mean,
should.
we got even lighter. Well, long coming out later. I think in September. It got pushed back with Liza P.
Oh yeah, Liza P is very high on my like anticipated games for this year. I played the demo and I really enjoyed it. There's some things
Yeah,
that they're supposedly tweaking about it, like the dodge and stuff like that, and some of the like hitboxes. But like even with them like addressing some of those things, I thought the demo was a lot of fun. It's
and it
basically like
yeah,
double A Bloodborne, and I'm like I'm down for that.
and it's gorgeous too.
It
I'm
looks
very excited,
incredible. Yeah,
very much so. And just we keep changing topics. The aesthetic of the whole game, like just the focus on it, just the mood, the camera angles, everything, the tone. Oh, it's just good. I want it.
yeah, it's gonna be fantastic.
Hey yo, Pinocchio, we fucking need you. Fuck shit up the block. And he's like, yes, sir. Imagine. I wish that was that. I wish it was like that. Like it was like the energy of Casper the Friendly Ghost. Be like, I pull up with a Glock 40, and it's just like friends. Oh, we don't we don't have rails.
What did you like about Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah, we've
Um,
gotten the typical Dave side of being angry at things.
I think when the narrative works, it works well along with their like prolonged cutscenes. It can be extremely immersing. Like those first few hours, I was invested as shit, and I remember when those big things happened, like when Joshua died. Like I was standing up watching the TV, my jaw dropped a little bit. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like I don't get that much in games. Like I usually see what's coming. It's all boring. I'm there for the gameplay anyway. But I'm like, all right, people are right. The first half is good. It's got my attention, and now I'm afraid so much so for when it loses it. And I'm still gonna. I'm about 2/3 of the way if I haven't said already, and I'm gonna see it through to the end. But you know, at first it really had me. Besides that, it's also gorgeous to look at. If I mean, I would love to be able to visit some of the vistas I can look at, but I can look at them and they're very pretty. Same thing with the pre-rendered cutscenes. Fighting's fun to a point. Like I can see how you said it can get pretty repetitive, but it's fun playing around with those different moves, even if you do get into a groove every once in a while. But it's pretty. It's fun to look at.
Yeah, talking about the combat and the moves, you can equip 3 icon abilities at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once you have the ability to choose between like 4 or 5 of them, and you have to like make those decisions of what essentially your build is going to be, that's where it gets kind of more interesting and a little bit more RPG-ish of like, what am
Yeah,
I going to swap out here? What am I going to swap in? What moves do I want here? Do I want to focus on like breaking that stagger meter with this group of abilities and then doing damage with these? And so that I thought was fun. But then once I kind of found the ones I settled into, I didn't really change them. Towards the end, you get one that's just kind of a little bit more of the same but with a different flavor, and I thought was a lot of fun to play with, and I kept it through the end of the game. And then you get one at the end that's kind of like an almost a completely different way to play the game and approach combat, but it comes so late that it's like, I guess this will be
hate
fun in
that
New
shit.
Game Plus.
Right. I mean, I just got my fourth one, probably like hour and a half, 2 hours prior from the last time I played, so pretty recently. But I've stuck with the first three that I've had because they seem to just work well enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but with the fire and the lightning elements doing enough damage to that parry meters, along with the wind based one that you get, and specifically with the wind based one, you get that parry meter down halfway. It kind of half breaks them and they
Yep.
kind of stagger for a second, and you can use one of your abilities to sort of like grapple onto their face and like rip them to the ground, and then it brings them down for a little longer to do more damage to them. So like I kind of found my format and just been sticking with that since.
Do you use the like Super Phoenix move?
The one where you spread out your wings and it kind of sends fireballs.
Yeah, and you get health back and stuff. Yeah,
You know,
level that one up as soon as you, because like the when you, because that's another interesting thing with combat is like if you can level up an ability once, and then if you level up a third time, it's called mastering it, and when it's
mm-hmm.
mastered, you can slot it into any icon tree. So like you can have the like lightning icon equipped as one of your three, but if you've mastered a wind ability, you can put it there.
Oh, I
So then
like
you,
that.
yeah, you can really start mixing and matching. But leveling up that Phoenix one, when he essentially like goes like super plus ultra, like Super Saiyan, when he's like
Yeah.
he does the wings and then he like does another scream and like more bands of fire come around him, and it's just like the whole screen is like white. And like I was playing it last night trying to beat some of the later game stuff, and I was using that ability a lot, and it was like I had my lights dimmed and everything, and anytime I'd use that ability I was kind of like pinned to the back of the couch just by the like white
Uh,
lights coming off my TV. It's really visually impressive game.
each element or icon has like a mega move that's like
Mm-hmm.
10 times more visual and animated than any of the other ones, and you end up just kind of equipping them not only because they do more damage but they're just pretty to look at.
Yeah,
Another thing that I we forgot to mention is when it comes to those moves too and doing damage to enemies during combat, some of them are more physical damage focused while other are more magic damage focused, which some enemies will take more damage whether it's based on like a sword or if you're doing like a fireball just attack towards them or just magic based, blah blah blah. Dylan,
Yeah.
were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was gonna. Yes. How is the voice acting in this game? Because I found that a lot of, well, I was gonna say JRPG, but I guess let's just say JRPG.
yeah.
Uh, the voice acting can be campy, very campy, and even in 15, I found the voice acting pretty campy. I ended up like connecting with the characters by the end of that game and
Mm-hmm.
really liking them. But you kind of, for me at least, I have to kind of get over an initial hump of like, okay, this voice acting, it's campy, not great, not my style. And eventually I'm like, all right, I'm used to it now.
Like
It's
watching an anime.
yes, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, is this how is the voice acting?
I feel like it all has its ups and downs. A lot of it can be campy at points. For me, I feel like it's based around per character. So they're all gonna have like their campiness levels, but if you like one character, you'll enjoy no matter what they say, no matter what. Sid.
I think that this game, I think they kind of relegate campiness to certain characters. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy named Gav, and like he's really kind of goofy and campy and whatever. But I think that like the main cast, they were going for Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And so I think they did their best to try to like be serious. And I think the voice acting is incredible. I think that the writing and stuff for the most part is good. I think one of my biggest complaints with Final Fantasy VII Remake was that you could probably create like an hour and a half long YouTube compilation of just the anime grunts and moans in that game.
Yeah.
And there's way, 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 way less of that in this game. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
like we're talking about opening those heavy doors and stuff. When he's doing that, he's not going. "Ugh."
More
And when
room for
he's
cursing.
yeah, exactly. And when he's like laying there, like when he's looking at a dead body on the ground or whatever, he's not going. "Ugh, ugh." You know, like the classic, like, oh, the character is being quiet, but we still need to convey emotion, but we can't convey emotion with animation because this is anime and it has to be cheap. So we're going to make them grunt. A lot of that is not here. Like, I was very impressed and like,
Mm-hmm.
I was happy to see that kind of stuff was toned down, and the writing in general and the dialogue and all that I thought was really good for most part. There are like some over the top moments and some definite like
Yeah.
more anime-esque things that happen, but I'd say for the most part, for all the Final Fantasy games I've played personally, which isn't that many, this has been the best voice acting and writing and like the least of that end of the spectrum.
There's some emotional moments like Clive's crying that like some of the emotion can feel a bit pushed, but it is really good overall.
Yeah.
I think Clive is, based on the pictures I'm seeing, more attractive than Sid.
I'm with
False.
you. Yeah, but
Sid comes off again. I haven't played it, so I'm just looking at pictures. He just screams "fuckboy" to me.
well,
No, Clive's fuckboy. Clive's fuckboy is shit.
nah, Clive's the emo kid.
Clive's the emo fuck. He's the e-boy, whatever that like they are nowadays. He's the one who sits on TikTok lives and like gifs and shit. Fucking Sid. Sid's hanging around the barber shops, meeting up with people, just, helping out the neighborhood. But everyone looks up to him, and he passes all the corners, and the women are just like, "Hey, Sid," and he's like, "Right," and he just keeps going because he's busy. He's got
Why
other
is
shit
he
going on.
hanging out at barber shop?
He's just that kind of guy. Like a barbershop is where you go. It's like a very community focused place. Everyone knows you walk in. It's like, "Hey, oh, Jimmy," and it's like, "Dude, getting haircut," and and everyone just talks. It's like, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Joey?" And then everyone talks about what happened to Joey. And that's where Sid is. He's the one who's talking about Joey, and everyone knows. And then he's got to walk by all the women.
Sid is the center of the community. Sid is the guy, and this is literal. This is not like an example. Sid is the guy who, before he says anything profound, lights up a cigar, takes a couple puffs, and then throws out his
Okay.
profound knowledge. And
To the moment he dies.
yeah, straight up, that's Sid. And then Clive is more like, I didn't ask to be attractive. Attractiveness was thrust upon me.
Okay.
But at the same time, he's
Got
like,
it.
"But if this is the punishment I must bear, then I will bear it to the day I die."
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, oh my god. What else? What else is there to speak on?
I don't know. This seems like we covered. All right, here we go. How is the performance of this game? As in, are frames dropping, especially because it sounds like it gets pretty visual, very, a lot going on, and games these days are tending to not release in good shape. So
Yeah. Well, this game's not on PC, so that helps.
yeah,
I played in performance mode, and there are probably some times I wasn't hitting a full 60, but like in gameplay, it was pretty smooth. I had a few weird like cutscene things where it seemed like the frames were dropping in a cutscene now and then, but it was pretty rare. The one thing that was my complaint, like performance and visually, and they ended up patching it when I was probably about like 20 or so hours into the game, is the motion blur initially was just like you move the camera slightly and it's like the whole world is just like whoosh, and it was making me motion sick. And so thankfully they patched in a slider where you can toggle it all the way off or you can like cut it down or whatever, and that seems to have helped. But the motion blur initially was super excessive and you couldn't do anything about it. But as far as like frame rate, they have a like 30 fps 4K version. They have the performance mode. I played 100% on performance mode, and I didn't notice any significant drops or hitches or anything in gameplay.
Pretty same.
sick.
I mean, played well. Didn't crash. Happy about that.
That's yeah.
That's the perk of optimizing your game for one platform. That's like the
Yeah.
main benefit of not releasing a cross-platform game. I mean, you get like your Spider-Mans and your God of Wars and stuff, and they're just like perfect. Yeah. It's because they only have to make them for PlayStation.
I'm still coming off of the last game I played was Lord of the Rings Gollum. So
Okay, but that's not a good benchmark. Like
no, that's
that's
what I'm
the
saying. Like
worst of the
jumping into
worst.
jumping into Final Fantasy 16 tonight.
Oh yeah, it's
After
gonna be
that,
like, oh yeah,
it's
video games can be good. I had
yeah.
forgotten.
Some people were meant to make them. Some
Some
people were
yeah,
meant
some
to
people know what they're
pay for
doing.
them.
Yeah.
But that's good. No, but legitimately that is good because I feel like more often than not right now, AAA games are coming out in not great condition.
Yeah. And especially on PC for some reason
For
lately.
PC
Yeah.
specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I can't really think of too much more to like dive into about this game other than, like I would be curious to hear your thoughts after you beat it, if you beat it, like some of the concerns you have story wise and character wise and stuff like that, to see I knowing where it goes and knowing some of the feelings and thoughts I had about that. I'd be curious to hear like where you end up
Mhm.
ultimately landing on this game once you've seen credits.
I don't know if I'll end up changing my score because at the point that I'm at now, having any bit of predictability or just assuming that like where I'm at in the game versus the ending, I have a feeling that they're going to tie up some of those loose ends to a point where I'll feel comfortable, but at the end of the day, I won't look back on this game being like that was amazing. Like I'll be like, yeah, that was a good game in a year of great games, but it wasn't up there as like something that I'm going to talk about like Zelda or Starfield or Spider-Man, etc.
Yeah, I could
But
see that.
I'll definitely write down in the chat on Twitter afterwards when I beat it. But I feel confident in giving it a 7, given its overall between the narrative, the type of game that it came out, even though of how linear it is compared to what I've played before with 15, and even 7. Like 7 just overall felt like maybe it was just a longer game or just more in depth in certain parts because this a lot of aspects felt scattered when it came to some of the gameplay and mechanics and just core of it. But the combat's fun and flashy. It's nice to watch, and it doesn't get too boring even after all that time. You said after 70 hours you finished.
Yeah, there's no in-game timer that I saw. I'd have to look on my PlayStation to
Mm-hmm.
to see. I wonder if I could pull it up on my app real quick. But uh there are definitely some times I like left the game running in the background, but I'm pretty sure I put some pretty significant time into this game. Let's see.
I've been looking at it when I back out and go to the home. It says on like the little
Yeah, is that
page that
new?
pops up.
I
I don't
just noticed
know.
that the other day, and I never noticed it before.
I barely touch my PlayStation anymore except for exclusives, so this is new to me. But as of right now, it said I have 17 hours and I'm at about 63% of the way through.
Yeah, I don't know if that shows on the app in the same way. So
Yeah. All games should time you correctly. That's just it. Every game should let you know and should do it correctly. That's it. That's it. If you
It
pause the game,
sounds like
stop the timer.
well,
You if
no, no,
you
no. What if you're in a pause menu that you're like deciding things, but it's still you're playing?
well if you open up like the menu of like options and whatnot, pause the timer. You're not playing. You could think, but you're just not like playing.
It sounds like Final Fantasy 16 has a good story, but it's a pacing problem
that would be my
from
number
what
one
you guys have
complaint.
said.
Yeah, is that I just think that eventually, like at a certain point, it starts to feel like, okay, let's get to the point. I think that if they had gone full linear, or if they'd trimmed down some of the fat and even kept it the structure it is, it would have been a better game for it. But overall, like I enjoyed it, especially having beating it. Like on your scale, do you do the 0.5s or do you just
Yeah.
do? I'd still probably go like 8, and for us, I think that'd be like a B. So I think that would be where I end up landing on it at the end of the day. Um, but there's definitely some bloat and some pacing issues and some just like it felt like tacked on stuff, like the RPG stuff, some of the side quests. They felt like it felt like the developers thought it should be there, so they added it, but it didn't really add a lot of value to the overall game.
Mm-hmm. When I look at it, I do a lot of like mental balancing. So like you'll have those moments like we were saying where like you'll come off from a big battle. It's exciting. So we're gonna come down. We're gonna tone it down a little bit, give you some time to relax. But you'll go from like a huge, massive, exciting battle down to a quest where you go, and then in the middle of that quest, you talk to someone, and they're like, "I'm gonna give you a quest that's part of the main story, but like it's a main quest inside of a main quest." But that main quest inside of a main quest is you're just going around just talking, and then you maybe
Mm-hmm.
go to another location and then you talk to them and then you immediately come back, and then maybe sometimes there's one little battle, but you're just talking, and then you finish that mission and then you go do another mission and there's more talking, and then you finish that other mission, and then there's a big battle at the end, but that's at the end of the whole chapter, which was also two missions that you, and then you're back into the big what.
Yeah,
What?
that's what I'm talking about.
So you have the highs and the lows.
Yes,
What was the daytime to nighttime ratio?
in the game.
Yeah.
Mainly daytime, I'd say.
Yeah, like, well, yeah, 65-35 maybe.
If you don't remember, Andrew, Dylan loves daytime games, specifically games that feature a city in the daytime.
Why?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I thought I assume we could have gone over this in the interview when we were on, but you know what? You know what? It's never not time to argue about this.
I have no reason. It's a vibe.
So you like daytime games in a city?
It doesn't always have to be a city, but I have noticed a correspondence with that.
His explanations, his technicalities, none of it makes sense. It's just so him, and he's
It's-
never had a good explanation.
I
Doke
don't-
V, yeah, that's a
I
daytime
see
Dylan
Doke
game.
V and I'm like, that looks great.
Cyberpunk
And I love that it's all sunny and
Cyberpunk
shiny.
2077 in the daytime? Nah, it's not the same.
Have you played Bloodborne?
Yeah, love Bloodborne.
That's a game where the city starts out kind of in the daytime and then it gets
That's
more and more night as the game
yeah,
goes
no,
on.
that is not a, but that never at any point qualified as like a daytime game for me.
Okay, gotcha.
Animal Crossing?
Yeah, that'll yeah.
But you only
Sure.
play that at the daytime.
No, I played it day and night.
God of War.
No,
Is not a
doesn't
daytime
that
game.
doesn't scratch that itch.
Final Fantasy 14.
No,
Skyrim.
I don't know. I'd have to play some more Sky. It's been a while.
What do you
I'd have
fucking...
to see if I get
No,
that
you
vibe.
don't. No one has to play more Skyrim. We've all done
I
enough.
agree with
we know
that.
everything. How do you not know by now?
You're
I
about
was
to
too
play
young
it
to
in
know
space.
that was a vibe I liked.
Dude, I cannot wait for Space Room.
Space Room.
Dude, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna be Mr. Spaceman, and I can't wait, dude. I'm gonna roleplay like a motherfucker. Every fetch quest, I swear to God, I'm gonna go into my little captain's quarters, and I'm gonna go into my drawer. I'm gonna put in my little delivery man outfit, and I'm gonna do a fetch quest, and I'm gonna bring them their shit, and I'm gonna go back into Killer Spaceman.
Wasn't there a game not too long ago that you were like super hyped about and then it sucked?
Probably. There's like every single one. Far Cry 6. I don't know. There's a bunch of them.
I feel like it was something really recently.
Atomic Heart.
Maybe
Redfall.
Redfall could be Redfall.
it might have been Redfall.
Redfall was. I feel like that one's hard because we knew a lot of it was going to be let down, like leading up to it. But I still had a lot of hope because not many games were doing Borderlands, or at least doing it right, and this was doing something along those lines. But I don't understand why games can't just do it but Borderlands. They have to do it but Destiny, and Destiny is the most boring ass shit. Like, I don't care. Borderlands does it right. You know what you want. You know where to go. Go get it. Fun. Why is Skull and Bones coming out?
Oh, here we go.
Notable game releases. Dave, why don't you do the first one?
Coming out today, July 27th, 2023, will be the first episode in the Expanse Telltale series, something I'm very, very excited for. That'll be out on PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC. Maybe they might be releasing every 2 weeks. Every time they release one of these games, they always get delayed. As long as it comes out.
They said on their website that they did this differently and that they can guarantee a new episode every 2 weeks.
Does that mean
Guarantee
they
is
have a
in
finished
it is
game?
in italics.
Because that's
Yeah,
the
they made
only
the
way.
whole thing and then they're just doling
That's
it
the
out.
only way, because the fact that they used to do that, where they would make an episode and release it while still developing, but not a finished, fully developed episode, and like they could be done with like 2 episodes and like it's out, and they're working on episode like 3, 4, and 5, and it's like, how do you do that?
It's like that classic kind of cartoon schedule or whatever. Yeah, Telltale
Yeah.
back in the day with like The Walking Dead and stuff.
Insane.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons that company like went under, but
Mhm.
when they came back, when they were like recreated or whatever, when they Frankensteined it back to life,
Yeah.
they came out and said like, we're going to make sure that when we release a game that it, we can release it at a consistent clip, as opposed to, oh, we're going to do one episode here and then
Yeah.
6 weeks. Because wasn't it Life is Strange, which isn't Telltale, but similar idea. Life is Strange
Well, that's the thing. I
2
think
or whatever. It took like a full year or something for all the episodes to come out. And there was like 5 episodes.
it's interesting because Deck Nine specifically, which is one of the developers alongside Don't Nod on the Life is Strange series, is the one who also helped develop The Expanse.
Oh, okay.
Along with the new Telltale, so they're all kind of seeming to like come together now. But that was definitely, I think possibly the original Tales from the Borderlands, because I know the second one was like the full game, because that wasn't even like, it was episodic, but like it just fully
They just
released.
dropped it. Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, there was not
Yeah.
like partial releases, but I think with the Guardians of the Galaxy one and the Batman ones too, there was definitely some inconsistencies with releases.
Those Batman ones were so good though.
So good. And the Guardians one was really fucking
I never
good, too.
played Guardians, but I might have to go check it out because that's easy gamer score and usually
Yeah.
pretty good time.
No, that one was surprisingly really good. I'm a big fan of that one.
Batman and Wolf Among Us probably my favorite.
Cannot wait for Wolf Among Us too.
Don't get too excited. You got to keep your hype in check.
I know.
Dave does not keep hype in check. He doesn't.
Back in the day, I pre-ordered every single game that was coming out. I would go to GameStop during midnight releases, and they would have that singular game that no one was gonna buy that just happened to release, and there's one copy, and I'm like, I'll take that too. It could be good. It probably won't. But I honestly, that's how I got Rhyme, and Rhyme, I love Rhyme. That game was amazing.
Rhyme was really good.
That game's so good. But I would pre-order everything. I love bad games too. That's just, if we weren't doing a podcast, I'd be like day one-ing Gollum. So bad.
It's not the good bad. It's the bad.
It's just the bad.
But I would have to find that out of myself, because a lot of games are bad, but then you find out they're just bad.
Yeah. Gollum.
Mm-hmm.
Disney Illusion Island is coming July 28th, just to the Switch.
Is that the side-scrolling like roguelike or Metroidvania like looking one? Okay.
Yep, the 2D action platformer thing. It's co-op. Plays Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, and Donald, I think, is the group you can choose from.
It's apparently very pretty, but very simple, is what I've kind of been hearing from like previews and stuff. I don't know if it's a full price game, probably won't do anything with it. If it's like discounted at all, I might pick it up and see if my daughter is into it. But
yeah, full priced.
Is it like a full 60?
Yeah, that's a bit much. Same kind of thing like co-op. I'm immediately like, oh, I might do this, but nah, I wouldn't pay 60 for
exactly.
This, no, I think that'll do it.
Did we do it?
We've done it.
Well, there you go. We did it.
This was the best episode on Final Fantasy XVI to ever exist in the podcasting sphere.
Well,
and it will be
for
tied
now.
with yours. It will be tied with yours.
For now. It was a lot of fun, though. I appreciate you guys having me on.
It was awesome to have you. We need to have more guests on, because we love having all interactions.
Tell us again about your show, real quick. Do an outro plug.
Yeah, outro plug. Again, the easiest way to find us is our website, effinggamers.com. We have everything there. You can find our socials. You can find our YouTube channel. You can find our podcast. On the podcast, we do interviews with cool content creators, kind of in the gaming community, and then we do deep dives on the games we love. We do a series called Neighborhood Watch, where it's just kind of like what we're playing, trying to scoop everything in that we couldn't fit into the other episodes. And then on the YouTube channel, it's more like quick, bite-sized, scripted type content. So if you're into that, we've got that for you too over there. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing, where we're at, and anywhere that you can find the Offshore Gamescast, you can probably find us. So again, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for being here. Dave, any final words?
Plorgus, Gingo.